Thank you for that. I'm so excited and honored to meet our elder of the conference and trying to connect with our people from the region. My mom was able to connect me with Wilson Justin. He's from the Althsetnay people, and he will just be grounding us in this place. So, Anabasi.
Well, thank you, or Tanan, as we would say, and good morning. The fundamentals of what you would call land recognition and ceremonial context in which you are a part of this morning is pretty complex. There are not only tribal connectivity actions, there are also what we would call clan overlaps in terms of territorial activities. And then there are what we would refer to in the Euro-Western ways as hostility actions, acts of war, ending wars. There are, in other words, almost a whole book of protocols on how to interact in somebody else's territory and how you would recognize somebody else's what we would refer to as connectivity to the landscape. I've often wondered about the issue of what we would refer to as distinct regional landscapes in terms of clans. So I'm going to walk through a couple of these items before I speak directly to the issue of the recognition of the landscape here, which is Dena'ina. The older people who are part of the what we would call communicative status of the old thoughts and thinking, storytelling styles, referred to these types of things as being someplace in a good way. That's the English translation. A more closer translation is take a good heart with you when you go to somebody else's land or somebody else's place. In the Ahtna region, on the outer areas of the Ahtna boundaries, and it was large, believe me. The history books are kind of like a little bit of a propaganda sheet. They don't exactly tell you. Long time ago nation, the older people used to say we had happy heart place over here. Over there was where the great-grandfathers would stop and camp, and they would leave a little something, a necklace, a little beadwork. They would put their heart there. Translated, what that meant was that you did not cross over with hostility in your heart. The literal translation of the way we spoke about these crossover place was happy heart place. And these were 4 or 5 different locations on the outer side of the Ahtna area. Generally, they are next to what we would refer to as easily seen rocks or landscape places. Or they would be in those places where the creeks would form a natural boundary. These were selected by clan leaders in terms of knowing where you're supposed to put your own best interests aside and your own personal likes and dislikes aside because you are stepping into your neighbor's yard. Sometimes they are mountains, sometimes they are rivers. Sometimes they are pastures where there are next to a fish creek. There is no rhythm or rhyme in terms of geological landscapes. It's all about where you and you have a meeting place in terms of crossover. They come this way, you come this way. In Anchorage, fairly large area, there are the Dena'ina people who have, at one time, linguistically speaking, very close connectivity with Supiaq, the Yupiks up in the northern country, and over towards the coastal arena. Nandalton is over the range over at Lake Clark. That's the furthest extent of the Dena'inas that you will find. And they are in an area that has a number of other tribes, yet they maintain their language and they maintain their status and they maintain their territorial activities. And when you speak to the really older people over there, they say the same thing that the Althsetnay people do. We have crossover places. That's what we call them, where you have good heart. These are the kind of rules and structure that we have in terms of our traditional values that are extraordinarily difficult to practice in the modern day age and impossible to translate. But when the older people used to speak at potlatches about these things, they would spend about talk. In that hour, hour and a half, sometimes it's several hours, they would identify all of the people on the husband's side, because these are days of arranged marriages. All the people on the husband's side, on the grandfathers, going back to where they originally came from and identifying all of the features of those places. And then on the mother's side, my mother is Althsetnay, Salcha, what we would refer to as the warrior clan. On my mother's side, the oratory, the potlatch speaker, now remember in potlatches we have the memorial potlatch, which could take place 20 years, 50 years after the passing. And we have funeral potlatches, which took place immediately. There are vast differences in the two types of potlatches in terms of the kind of oratory that is brought into play. In the memorial potlatches, which I'm speaking directly to, these discussions about both sides of the arranged marriages clans took place. And these were, in the best terms of the English language, legal descriptions of the resources that are shared down through history on both sides of the clan, the grandfathers and the grandmothers. So when a potlatch speaker, and I am a potlatch speaker, I have authority through the medicine people descendants to speak to issues that are off limits. Sadly, like a lot of youngsters, I got distracted when I was young and didn't listen. But I heard enough to be able to make out the general rules and the general traditions in a way I could bring it to you in places like this. And I would never be criticized by elders. They would never say you did that wrong. They would say you did your best. Good enough. So the potlatch oratory activities would relay the rules of conduct in terms of resource management, the sharing of the gifts from different landscapes in terms of language, how you would recognize the opposing clan's language, when you can use it. The oratory in these potlatches, in terms of the memorial potlatch, would also determine how and who would speak to the issue of moving in across these what we call good heart locations. So that brings us to this unique issue of land recognition, which has come out the last few years. It's a misnomer. We don't have land in our language. We have place and we have time. We have seasons and we have clan resources. We have rivers, we have waters, we have glaciers, we have lakes, but we don't have land. And even worse, the idea is repugnant to our traditions. You cannot bring property into our traditional memorial potlatch oratory. Why? That's an act of war. It's mine. That means a fight, a war is going to break out. And one of the things that I was just explaining here a bit ago is that I don't introduce myself personally, because in the old days, when a clan leader, official of the higher works, what we would call the medicine people, they would only use their name given to them by their parents at the beginning. Your uncle, your aunt, your clan leader, even what we would refer to as the clan speaker, which is basically a counselor, all had the means to introduce your grandfather or your grandmother as an opening remark to who you are. So now a lot of traditional leaders are reluctant to do these kinds of opening remarks on these kinds of places because you have to violate several clans in terms of the Euro-Western mindset. I am very fortunate because I'm a descendant of the medicine people. And I don't have what we would refer to as license to be a practicing medicine man. But I am a direct descendant. And I am also a descendant on my mother's side from a long lines of clan leaders, very prominent names. I have a little bit of some of these traditional rules. Doesn't mean I can do it all the time. Doesn't mean I can benefit from it. It doesn't mean I can impose my will on other people or tell you how to live your life or what to do while you're here. It just means that I have the ability to bend the rules now and then to accommodate a purpose. Doesn't make it legal for me to do this all the time under all conditions. I have to be cautious when I speak to these things. You're all strangers. You're all welcome. You're all what I would refer to as people who are moving through the Dena'ina lands. And if this was 200 years ago, 300 years ago, you would have a variety of what we would call ceremonial activities directly related to your temporary presence here. Some of it would be gifts, maybe beadwork. One of you, most likely your main speaker here, organizer, would get a vest, which would be in your family for hundreds of years. The last person to leave after this would be given a goodbye action of some kind, perhaps a song that would be remembered for hundreds of years, but most likely a favorite baby's name. So the last person that would be exiting this good heart place would be given something that would be memorable in terms of our traditions, whereas the first person to receive a gift would be given something that would designate the high level of governance, which would be something we would do for a tribal leader across the clan. All of these things would occur several hundred years ago. Today we simply say we acknowledge the fact that we are on Dena'ina lands. We wish their ancestors peace. We hope to maintain ourselves in a dignified way through these processes. And we apologize for the fact that we cannot speak to their time in the most effective way, which means acknowledge their names and their family in these localities. I know Dena'ina through my medicine man ways of hearing these stories. I know a lot of locations that differ from the English version. But I don't know Dena'ina in a way that I should, which is full recognition in terms of not only language, but a good heart place. So the best I can do is on the behalf of the people who were here before all, is to say thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing a good heart. And thank you for the fact that you are willing to let another individual come in and be a part of your morning in a way that brings respect to what it is that you do. It's an in many ways. So for the last person who is going to leave, and I think this is what, 3 days? Got to remember, I don't even know your agenda. But for the last person that's going to leave in a couple of days, and all of you are leaving, of course, but we want to maintain. My talk to you is a direct gift to your organizer. Leaves the waving of the hearts to one another as one leaves and the other stays. I won't be here, I will leave also. But all of you need to receive something as a wave as you go on to the next phase. So before I say thank you finally, this is for the ones who are saying goodbye or being said goodbye to Naina from me on behalf of the Naina. Tuwa dinay tuya, tuwa husayya, tuwa nisya, tuwa nisya, ha hu ha ha hu he ho he. Tanan.